Hi, I'm Mrs. Burns and welcome to Lesson 1 of our Chapter 9 unit, all about linear relations. So today we're going to introduce how to graph coordinate points. So we're going to look at how you can not only read what a graph says when you have a bunch of dots in a line, but we're also going to be able to draw them to represent information. So let's go over some of those most important points. What does a graph include? Well, whenever we have a graph, we want to make sure that we draw an x-axis, a y-axis, that we label them, include a title, and have all of our points. So I'm going to use my handy-dandy ruler here to try to draw as straight of a line as I can. Sometimes they turn out straight, sometimes they don't. So here we go. Beautiful. So we have a line that goes across sideways, that's called horizontal. This is our x-axis. We have a vertical one, that's the y-axis, that goes up and down. And I put arrows to show that that keeps going outwards. We're always going to have a title, which we underline at the top. And then we're going to label these axes. So here I'm going to say x means time in seconds, and I'm going to say y means distance. And we're going to say that we use meters for distance. And then we have points of data, so we have, say, a point here, and a point here. Well, when we have our x-axis, we're going to have little lines that say how far something is. So we've got, these ones are all positive on this side. So when we talk about quadrants that are positive and negative, let's just go here for a second. Y, we have positive on the right, negative on the left for our x-axis. We have positive at the top for the y, negative at the bottom. So positive, negative, positive. You don't have to draw that every time, you just need to know it. So if we look at, say, this point, for example, right here, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4 along the x-axis. So if we were to do this in brackets, the x1 then here was 4. And if we go for the y, these are -1, -2. So if we look, oh, that's kind of close to, it should be -1. So this point would be 4, -1. So if I gave you, you had to guess which one of these, -3, -2, -1, and this is 1 and 2, which point I'm talking about here. If I said, well, I want you to go to the point that's 2, 2, well, then you would go over 1, 2 to the right for the x, and then 1, 2 up, and this point here is 2, 2. And finally, this point here would be -3, because you go over to the left, -3, and then you go down, -1. So that's the x and then the y. So we're going to try actually graphing together. When we do that, we always want to use a ruler, and we want to make sure that our graph isn't teeny tiny, but it takes up at least half of the page. I like to say most of the page. So we have these data points that Danielle is jogging according to. So we have time and distance, and we want to have time on the x-axis and distance on the y-axis. So if we were to make these points into coordinates, then we would say, well, time goes first because it's x, and then distance. And then for the next one, time, 1 second, distance, 4. The next one, time, 2 seconds, distance would be 8. And for the next one, time is the x-axis, so it goes first 3, then the y-axis second, and then again x and y for our points. So these are the data points that we'll be using. And let's flip to the back. And here we have our graph paper. I'm going to make my picture a little bit smaller so that I can get more writing in on my graph. Now here's the bottom down here. We don't want to start our graph right at the bottom because we need to have room to write time in seconds, because that's going to be the label of our second graph. So maybe let's start the bottom. I'm going to use my ruler like right about here. There we go. It's pretty close to my line. Hopefully you can get yours right on the line. And then we're going to go up the side. And so I'm going to try to use as much space as I can. I'm going to use my ruler again and follow this line with my ruler and draw my My line is almost straight, but hopefully yours is way better. So we have time on our x-axis and distance in meters. So notice how I put my units, meters and seconds, in brackets beside the word, and this is my y-axis. Now, when I want to plot these points, this could keep going downwards and left, but in this case all of our numbers are positive, so we really only need to show the two positive lines. And we have this dot right here in the middle where the two lines meet. That's the origin. That's going to be 0, 0. So that's the 0 point. Now, we need to look at our points. We have 0, 0. We have 1, 4, 2, 8, 3, 12, and 4, 16. So we need to look at these points and graph them, but in order to graph them, we need to have numbers on our number line. So let's look at how we can spread this out. Now, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that from the 0 to the top, that you pick your first number and your last number, and that you even out all the numbers in between. So we want to count either up to 16 or 2 times 16 maybe, for example, and go up double, because we want it to go pretty high here. So let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 29, 30, 31, 32. Oops. 32 is here. And we have 16 here. So if we look at our little draft, we could get up to 32 up at that top line. We don't want to go to 32, but if we only go to 16 down here, then it's pretty small. So let's, instead of doing each box is 1, maybe we should do every other box is 1. So we go skip a box and then 1, skip a box and then 2, skip a box and then 3, skip a box, 4, skip a box, 5, and so on. You can draw this in. And there we go, 16. So now we just need to plot our numbers on the x-axis, and we know that our numbers go from 0 to 4. So if we were just to do each little box 1, 2, 3, 4, it would stop there. So that's no good. That's too small. We need to spread it out a lot bigger. So maybe we do, instead of even every box or every other box, let's do every 4 boxes means 1. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4 seconds. And we can only write the 1, 2, 3, 4 because we have time equals seconds in the brackets there, so we don't have to write seconds after every number. Now that we've figured out our axes, which can be the toughest part, making sure everything's even. Oh, and one more thing to note, you can't just go 1, 2, 3, 4 and then have a big jump in numbers and then go to 10. You have to keep everything evenly spaced the whole time, and that's why it can be tricky. So now let's take our coordinates and actually graph them. I've already done this dot in the middle and wrote 0, 0. So now let's find 1, 4. Remember that the first number is the x-axis and the second number is the y-axis. So for the 1, let's go over to the 1 here and let's find the 4 and let's look at where they both meet and draw a dot there, and this will be 1, 4. All right, now let's look at the 2 and the 8 and find where they connect. 2 goes up and 8 goes across, and so they meet right there. So this is our 2, 8 point. Now for the 3, 12, let's go up the 3 and find where it meets the 12, and that should be right there, 3, 12, and we're going to label it. And finally, 4, 16, 4 goes up and 16 goes across. So they're going to meet right there, 4, 16. Now that we've drawn all our dots, sometimes you just leave it at that, and sometimes we're going to connect the dots. For linear relations, we want to see the dots connected. So we're going to use a ruler, oopsies, to connect all of our dots together in a straight line. Let's see here if I can make this a straight line. Good. And I'm going to draw an arrow at the end because it doesn't say that Danielle stops, so maybe she keeps going. Now sometimes when we have a graph, it's not going to be as perfect as this where the line goes through all the dots so nicely. Sometimes in real life we'll speed up a little bit, we'll slow down a little bit when we're jogging, so the points might not match up correctly, perfectly. So in that case, you just draw a line where it mostly fits through. All right, we're going to practice all of this a little bit more in class next day. Please come prepared, ready to learn.